I'm just gonna set off in my room because my laptop's about to die. As you can see, we did not plan this podcast really well. Probably should have charged my laptop before this. We'll obviously cut this out in post, or
Yeah.
not. We'll probably have a bloopers reel. Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of the Mind Under Rocks podcast. My name is Manu, and
I'm Rodrigo.
we're going to be talking about mental health and issues in our current day generation. So, let's start by telling us a little bit about ourselves. Rodrigo, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I am 31 and I'm Brazilian. And I grew up I think a lot of people are going to relate to this, especially from developing countries. Our parents did not really have like a lot of information on mental health, emotional health. And there's also like I grew up before the internet. So as the internet came, I was on my teens, and that hit us unprepared, I would say. So I think a lot of millennials just did not know how to deal with this, and it kind of like just things were all over the place. So I've been struggling with mental health for this reason and a bunch of other reasons that I'm not going to go through because there are so many. But I think the idea is that really in this day and age, if you just go about your life unprepared and without any information on mental health, especially when it comes to social media, the internet, being connected to people, this can be very dangerous and can get you in a really, really unhealthy mental state. So this is where I'm coming from. I've been dealing with anxiety and depression as well for a couple of years now. So, on and off medication, trying some coping mechanisms, drinking, playing video games, whatever. And it took me many, many years and many, many tries and failures to actually get to just being a functional human being and being okay with me, being okay with my mind and not over stressing over every little piece of moment that goes through your day. So yeah, I think my goal is to not only like help myself, but also try how can I give this information that is helping me out to other people. And this is why I'm here. So yeah, Manu.
That's really interesting. A little bit about me. I'm 23. I graduated 7 months ago from a master's in computer science, and now I'm just stranded because of the world of AI and just everything, and just so confused because it almost feels like my degree is something that can be done for a chatbot now. So just really stranded as to where I am. And it was also around that time that, around a year ago, that me and my friends started building a social media company because we realized that we were getting addicted to social media. So we wanted to create a safe space that is unlike the traditional social media outlets like Twitter and now called X, and TikTok and Instagram, which only wants to get you hooked and gives you misinformation and fake news, and just brain rotting AI based content, and influencer drama and stuff. So we created basically like a filter towards all of this, and that's Infotech. And I really feel like a good way of getting the word out about it is a podcast. And also, I feel like all of us who's worked on this project have personally dealt with a lot of mental health struggles. And I don't think it's something that's unique to us. I think everyone in our generation, especially growing up in the age of AI, technology, social media, and the internet, we're more likely to have mental health problems than not. And yeah, so I'm also just in this confused space trying to figure out what I'm doing. Even yeah, pretty much in the same boat as you, I guess.
Yeah, it really is kind of terrifying. And it's interesting because it's almost like everything is fine and you go about your life and you're doing your day to day stuff, you're going through the motions, but at the same time, deep down that something's off. I think that, like mental health for me, it's pretty much like that. Like, hey, I'm going on with
Mm,
my life. I'm going to work, I'm having my relationships and stuff. I'm eating, I'm taking care of myself, but it doesn't really quite feel okay deep down. And it's almost like there's this like building anxiety just over the months, but sometimes even over the years. And then you just get to a point where this is probably what people call burnout. It's just like
oh,
building.
but do you also feel like the current state of the world right now is to blame kind of for the anxiety? Because I feel like personally, I watch too much news. And that's not the best thing I could be doing for my mental health. But also seeing the wars that are being started and how politics are just going to more and more of a oligarchical system, it doesn't seem like we're headed in the right direction. So even if you take yourself out of the personal issues that's happening to you, it's still like the world is still in a really bad place and it's getting worse and worse. And I feel like that also contributes to anxiety a lot.
Yeah, it's almost like we're sat in a trap environment. The environment we're living in is kind of a trap because you get hooked to news, and that the news that get the most clicks are the news about terrible stuff. So
Yeah.
news outlet are more likely to just show you terrible stuff. And social media is the same, like the videos that are like, oh my God, this many people died, war is going on. It's more likely to get more clicks. And so it gets like it's building up to where you're getting lots of news. Most of them are bad, and most of them make you feel some negative emotion inside of you.
Mm,
And over the weeks and over the months, it's almost like you're feeding into like this constant state of being alert. Oh my God, what's next? Is my
yeah.
country going to get in some kind of war next? Or even if you're not in physical danger, but just constantly hearing like bad things or bad stuff, gossiping. And yeah, I think like social media, with all the positives that it has, this is one of the facts that is more like damaging to us. You're just kind of like the danger of creating almost an echo chamber of anxiety.
I feel like social media wouldn't be this horrible in itself if obviously it's going to push hate fuel news and stuff that gets most clicks. But it's also the fact that this stuff exists in the world, and we know for a fact that it's increasing, and it doesn't seem like in the next 10 years or so it's going to get better in any way. It's just going to get worse and worse. So I think social media is to blame definitely for showing us all of these issues in our society, but the fact still is that there is a lot of issues in our society and just the economic systems that we live in. And maybe if that is to change, then social media wouldn't be that much of an issue. But definitely, social media is definitely expanding the issue by just showing us this stuff and getting yeah.
Yeah, and I think one thing to kind of like reflect on is that like, okay, so there are a lot of things kind of like messing with our mental health, and there are a lot of bad news out there. But also, like, if you just decide that you're not going to keep up with any news any longer, that's probably not ideal. Um,
Yeah.
you're going to be very out of the loop, and sometimes it's
Mm,
even going to be like embarrassing for you. So, there are many questions on, okay, that we're living in kind of like a weird environment, but at the same time, how do we navigate that? Also, like what you talked about AI, and like what do? Some chatbot can just Say
Yeah,
everything that you
like
learned over
4 years
four
of my
years.
course is just gone because of one technological advancement made by a company, and now it's like I'm just in depth in like stuff like what was it all for?
Yeah, so I think there's a major question, and that has some answers, but not necessarily those are clear answers for everybody. So, how do we navigate this life? How do we balance things out in a way that, hey, I don't want to completely stop using social media. I want to see the stories that, my family and my friends post on Instagram. I want to know if they're getting married or having babies. But at the same time, I don't want to be just scrolling Instagram at, I don't
Yeah,
know, like 1 a.m. and having like insomnia. So,
yeah.
I think
So
both
I think
extremes are bad, and we kind of have to balance.
I think that's also kind of the idea behind why we actually started Infotech, because we realized that social media companies went from what messaging apps and keeping track of your friends to just being short form videos, which is completely different from what social media initially started off, because now you're watching influencers and AI created videos and stuff. And this has nothing to do with staying in touch with the people that you love and care about, which is the idea of why social media started. And more often than not, I find myself using social media apps as messaging applications. And I get a text from one of my friends, I open it, reply to them, and then I get stuck on Reels for the next
Oh
half
my
an
God,
hour.
yes.
So yeah, so I feel like and that's how they make money too, because they show you ads on Reels. So the more time you spend on Reels is the way they make money. Obviously, they don't show ads in your chat or in your friends' stories. They do show ads in stories now too, but the main profit making margin is Reels. So they know it's more that's the most addictive part of it. So they keep trying to push that onto you. And with the infinite scrolling, you don't know if you spend half an hour or for an hour, or your entire day is just gone.
And that is a very new concept, I think, because before,
Mm,
like, nothing was just endless. Like, hey,
yeah.
I'm gonna go to the bar with the boys. At some point you're gonna come back home. Hey, I'm gonna watch this football game. At some point the game is gonna be over. But now, like,
Mm,
it's every single time you just feel like the smallest discomfort on your day, you can grab your phone, you can start scrolling, and there's no like, oh, in half an hour you're going to be done and then you're going to have to close your phone. No, you can't just and go. And I think that's something really new to just like human beings in general. It's like we've been addicts are as old as humankind, I think. Over the years there's always been like alcohol addiction or drug addiction or whatever, or maybe like compulsive eating and stuff like that. But I think the problem with alcohol and food and all of those substances, they kind of have like this effect on your body. If you drink too
mm,
much, you're going to be obviously drunk. If you eat too much,
mm.
you're probably going to get some pounds. But if you scroll too much, you're kind of like you're messing up with your brain, you're messing up with your mind, you're messing up with a lot of mental related things that you do not necessarily see. So you just look at yourself in the mirror, you're like, hey, I'm fine, nothing's wrong.
Yeah.
And over the years you're damaging yourself more and more, and because it's kind of invisible, you don't even realize this.
And coming back to the infinite scrolling part, that's definitely something new that we've never actually had in the human civilization before. Because think about it, every single thing, even movies, have to come to an end. Shows, episodes, everything has a beginning and an end, something you can break yourself out of. Even before we had advertisements, which was the perfect time to actually like close the app or something. So actually, Infotech's logo itself, if you look at it, it's a broken infinity logo because we want to break the loop of scrolling. So that's basically one of the main things that was our idea of creating this app, is that we realized that with infinite content that is short form and just easily understood, and if you don't like it, you just scroll past it, you lose track of time. really easily because you do not know if you're spending 20 seconds or an hour or like your whole day. Infinite content is not something that should always be given to humans. And also adding to the point that all of this content is brain rotting, not educational, not informative content. And you're going to end up with an entire generation that's more stupider than the previous generation. And it's actually the case. I think the next generation that's going to be born is the first generation to have a lower IQ in the history of the human civilization. We've always grown smarter, but I think the next generation actually is going to be stupider because they're, I mean, sorry to say it, but that's literally the facts. They've literally done research on it, and they found that the newer generations of kids are actually not as smart as the generation that preceded them because they're offloading most of their mental work to AI and just the internet in general. Yeah, so it's a real interesting time to be living in.
It is kind of crazy. And that reminded me of, like, I was listening to a different podcast, and they said that the word of the year of 2024 is brain rot. So
Brain rot, yeah.
I think that tells a lot about the society we're living in these days. And sometimes it's hard to blame it on the kids, because I imagine, like, I cannot imagine, but trying to, like, okay, if I had like 6 or 7 years old and like my parents were, I don't know, busy with something or whatever, and they just wanted to not get rid of me, but like they're tired of giving attention to their kids. They just give
Yeah.
them a cell phone, and be like, hey son, just scroll, just watch some YouTube videos or whatever. Hey, just scroll TikTok a little bit. Hey son, why don't you go over there and scroll TikTok a little bit? So that's I'm not entirely blaming. It's really hard. Like, we can't just blame the kids, I think, is the point. And but then it brings us to like another major question, like, who do we blame them? Which is also interesting, like the internet, like the Meta.
I feel like definitely this
Yeah.
it's yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
Uh,
so we were talking about just like how the next generation is really struggling. Brain rot is the thing.
yeah.
Who's to
So
blame?
definitely, I'd feel like social media companies are to blame for the majority of it because obviously they're making money off of our addictions, and they're fueling this addiction because they get to keep making profits. And the fact is, now more and more they're actually spending money into legislations and lobbying to create laws that actually allow them to continue doing this, even though they know it's a mental health problem that they're causing in the young generations. And I think that's the worst part. Like, you as company should at least have some kind of oversight by the government, especially when you're creating a problem. We should look at social media companies just the same way as cigarette companies and alcohol companies. Regulate them, right? Like, I mean, alcohol and cigarettes have their place in society, but once you know their harms, we need to have regulation, just like AI too. We can't just go willy nilly, and we can't have the companies making the laws for themselves, which is what is happening more and more with the lobbying firms and everything, where the richest companies get to make law, like get to push the laws and agendas onto the politicians. And also, I blame the politicians too in the fact because a lot of them just do not know what they are actually trying to regulate, especially with AI. If you look at some of the stuff that they're talking about in the hearings, you really see how uninformed they are. First off, they're a much older generation, which is another problem that we need to address, where most of our leaders and politicians are way older than the general public that they are governing over. But more than that, I feel like you, as your role as a politician, should be informed about the stuff that you're making laws about, that you're trying to regulate, about things that are causing mental health and problems in an entire generation of public that you're supposed to be helping. So yeah, you can definitely throw blame at a lot of people, but I feel at the end of the day, in today's day and age, I feel like it mostly comes down to a personal stance as to where you want to be in terms of this addiction. Because you can blame the government, you can blame the social media companies as much as you want, but personally, you always have the power to, turn off social media or uninstall TikTok and download Infotech.
That's so true. I think that as much as I agree with you that the companies are to blame and the politicians are to blame, I think that waiting for them to give you a solution is a really bad idea. And it would never just, sitting and waiting for other people who are to blame to fix the situation. I don't think that's ever a good idea, to be honest. So I do agree with you that there are people that need to fix those problems. But in the meantime, it's up to us to take action to somehow try to balance things out in our lives and regulate ourselves. I think a lot of problems are also coming from like this artificial reality that we're living, because really we're not ready for this. Like the internet has been around for a while now, and we still don't fully comprehend or know how to live with this with the internet. And things just evolve and new things appear, like social media and short form videos, and now AI and AI videos, now AI short form videos. I feel like the technology is coming up with more and more artificial things that we're just not ready for. And actually, like human beings in a nutshell, you're born, you learn stuff. And then once you're like 18 or 20, you go into adulthood. And in adulthood, you're kind of like do your thing that you learn for like 20 years. But now it's like, hey, anything you learn is going to be like probably stale in a couple years from now. So like it's like your diploma. Hey, you got a diploma. There's also this chatbot that knows everything that you spent 4 years trying to comprehend. So, the pace of change is very insane in this day and age.
And also, I feel like more and more people are saying, "Oh, don't worry about AI. You should just learn how to use AI in your job, and so you don't get replaced and you use it effectively." Which I get to a point, but also we're churning out thousands, if not millions, of engineers every year out of our universities. And the fact is, I can be way more productive with AI, which is obviously a positive. But what happens to the five other people's jobs that I'm taking away just because of AI? Obviously, you'll need one AI prompt engineer to create these kind of softwares and stuff. But the fact is, before that, you were going to employ five different people. So so by removing these five people's jobs, who's getting the most benefit? Obviously, they're not going to pay me 5 times the salary. So what happens is that the four people's salary who's they save is just goes back up to the top with the corporate profits. So we're quickly going towards an age where work is not going to be a universal work. Work is just going to be something that people do. It's going to be much harder to get. Let's put it that way. That's because people in companies obviously love automation. People do not like doing work. Or AI and robotics are going to take away most of our jobs. But then what's left for humans, right? Because we live in a society where we need to work to make money. But what happens when the number of jobs available is just diminished to the point where almost everything is done by AI and robots? So only the rich who have stocks in the companies and getting dividends will be making money still, and the regular folk is just left to, I don't know, wither.
And you bring out, you kind of like lead me to a very interesting point where it's like, it feels like the trend is the rich are going to get richer and the poor is going to get poorer, which is not a good place to be, as most people are not the top 1%. And also, like, it begs the question, so those five people that got replaced by AI, what are they going to do? Just sit around?
Yeah.
Like, I know people that, have 20-year long careers or whatever. And in the past, 20-year long career was not even like a long career. People could spend like 30, 40 years working on the same thing and being, it's almost like their identity is their
Yeah,
craft. And being replaced
yeah,
by AI, it's like, okay, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to come up with some universal basic income? And that solves a little bit of the problem. That solves maybe the money problem. But what about the meaning? We're meaning seeking creatures. We want to do stuff that we believe in. So, how's that going to be 5 years from now? Yeah.
I definitely feel like still, let's not take away the importance of universal basic income. I feel like that's definitely the right step in the right direction, but universal basic income should also, I feel, keep increasing as the jobs decrease, because I feel like we have inflation, we have public transport prices rising, and we have the taxes on the lowest strata of population rising. I feel like these are all things that are like the opposite of what we want to be going towards, right? If you want to an idealized society, then wouldn't you want a society where more and more people can afford more and more stuff? Where we do not have poverty anymore, where the rich is actually brought down, the wealth of the rich is brought down, and the wealth of the poor is brought up. But we still feel this gap, it just keeps increasing and increasing every year, and with AI especially, and the number of jobs that are going to be lost, it's going to be insane how much change is going to make in the entire society.
Yeah. And it's very interesting to me how we started on this place and we just kind of like went to AI in the future and uh, the difference between economic classes. But I do feel like that's all connected. And pretty much like everything we've talked about, the bottom line, it's probably gonna mess up with people's mental health even more.
I feel like, especially when we're coming to a topic like mental health is definitely. Oops, I'm just gonna set off in my room because my laptop's about to die. As you can see, we did not plan this podcast really well. Probably should have charged my laptop before this. We'll obviously cut this out in post, or
Yeah.
not. We'll probably have a bloopers reel.
But I mean,
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
another thing that I'm thinking is just that my lightning sucks. Most of my face
Oh,
is
yeah.
just that's terrible lightning.
Yeah, maybe
Oh
we
my
should work on that for the next episode. Yeah.
Yeah, we got many things to improve, but it's okay. We're already doing it, which is probably the most difficult part. So
I think taking the first step is the most hardest stuff of part, right? So
yeah, yeah, but I mean, I don't even know for how long we've been going, but I think it's so easy to keep on talking about mental health problems and like everything how everything is set up in society these days. Most general things probably mess up with your mental health more than they help your mental health. So I
Yeah.
think that's just like a common topic over many different like subtopics. Okay. AI, social media, short form videos, endless scrolling. There are many things. It, again, goes back to artificial stuff that we as humans are not ready for. We don't know how to
Yeah.
navigate this artificial world. And it's definitely going to be a challenge. And it is being a challenge for me and for you, I think, to keep up a good mental health as we live our lives in this society.
And especially where you put up an interesting point where we started off with mental health, but then we moved to AI and politics and the wealth gap and capitalism and stuff. And I feel like especially with something like mental health, we're affected by all of these things that are happening in society right now. So when you take a topic as broad as mental health, it's unlikely that you would not come across these topics in conversation, because anything that's in current day talks are definitely going to affect people's mental health, and either positively or negatively. But more and more we see with AI and with social media and just the misinformation and politics and the wealth gap and capitalism, it's all trending towards the wrong direction. And the more information you get, the more depressed and more anxiety driven I feel like people get. And I feel like the best thing people can do is just shield themselves away from everything and just try to live their lives in isolation, which again is not a good way to live because we live in a society. So you're stuck in this paradigm where you don't know whether which way you want to fall, whether you want to stay informed or whether you want to or whether you want to prioritize your mental health, because staying informed is going to affect your mental health negatively.
The truth has been spoken. I think in general, like we brought up a bunch of situations, a bunch of questions that we have. Most of them are unanswered. And my goal with this podcast is kind of like to give myself in first place, but also give other people like good solutions to those problems. And I think it's almost like, I feel like, nowadays it's almost like you have two jobs. The first job is whatever job you have, that is the usual job that pays your bills. And the other job is trying to actually just keep yourself as a functional human being and not falling into any of those traps that we mentioned. So being manipulated by algorithms, being mindless, endlessly scrolling things, and just being like the new generation that it's actually not becoming smarter because of just mindless scrolling and brain rot. And it's not an easy job. Sometimes I feel like this job is almost harder than my actual job, And yeah, it's good to be partnered with you in this journey.
And I think also added to all the stress and anxiety about like the knowledge of the world is also the helplessness that most people feel in it. Because you see the war in Gaza and you see people starving, and you wish that if I was born a billionaire, I could actually be more empathetic. I would be helping people. And then you see the billionaires who exist, who Elon Musk himself can solve world hunger by just his own personal wealth, and you see how selfish they are, and you just can't fathom how these people exist, how unempathetic these people can have when they have the resources to do so much good, and yet they spend all of the resources just advancing their own personal wealth. And the majority of people who go through mental health problems is because they feel powerless on it, because as an individual, there's not much you can do. And even your votes aren't that great when most of the countries have a two-party system, but whatever. But your votes are basically going against one billionaire or another billionaire or whoever, and they're just bought off by lobbying corporations and stuff. So irrespective of what you, or for who you vote for or what you choose, that the corporations are always going to win. So it's kind of a helplessness kind of feeling that I feel a lot of people go through, where you really don't have any say in it. You don't have any power to actually make any meaningful, impactful change in society.
And that is so painful, because I definitely relate to that. It's like, hey, okay, I'm aware of, how social media algorithms just are making new people, like kids and 5-year-old, addicted to scrolling and just not really contributing to their growth in any way. But okay, like, what am I going to do about it? Like, more and more we have almost like the majority of the power, let's just say. Most of the power, especially on the internet, it's being more and more concentrated in the hands of the big companies. So like, hey, it's almost like, hey, if you control YouTube, you control, I don't know how many percent of the video content that people watch on the internet. And now TikTok and Instagram. And it's kind of insane to think how like a few people, like with a few different apps, can have this impact on billions and billions over the entire world. And it goes back to what you said. It's like, hey, I'm just a guy in Brazil what am I going to do about this, you know? And God forbid AI take my job, because then I'm gonna be like double helpless and be like, oh my God, man, the only thing that I thought I could use to contribute to society was taken away from me. So like, what do you do now?
Mm.
Yeah.
And also, just coming back to the point, what actually drove me to create Infotech was also Elon Musk buying Twitter. And I used to use Twitter quite a bit. It was one of my only social media platforms that I actually kind of liked. And I realized after he took over how easy it is for someone to change the algorithms, to change what kind of information you receive. Because I'm pretty sure the people that whose I used to see still exist on Twitter from 2 years ago. But the fact is, all of their posts are just covered over by new posts that are more right wing because the person who bought the platform changed the algorithm a bit so that it pushes content of a certain type more than the others. And not something that's anyway positive. That's literally mind control. When you realize that like 60% of the population only looks at social media for the news information, and person has the power to change algorithms, to change the kind of information that you receive. Isn't that person basically have control over your mind? It's kind of scary, honestly.
Yeah, that's very scary. It's a scary thought. It's a scary situation. And again, I worrying about children, because we know those things, you know. We're aware of what's
Yeah.
happening, but like children are so easily manipulated. They're, you know, I wonder like 5 or 10 years from now, what kind of beliefs people are going to have, or like what kind of misinformation is going to come up. Back in the day, you should get your information with mouth to mouth, hey, these people told me that, and we're doing that on a massive scale now. But again, the problem is that, like, if for some whatever reason this misinformation video gets more and more traction, the algorithm shows it to more and more people, and then like, hey, if you're like 7 year old, how are you gonna discern from what's true and what's just fake news? How are you gonna discern
Yeah.
from, hey, this is helpful for me, this is, hey, this is manipulating me to get my money, and hey, this is actual content that is trying to help me out and turn me into like a good human being. Not only children, I think children are more vulnerable, but you can be at any age if you're not aware of what's behind, as you mentioned, like people, like the companies, they're driving their to make more and more money, more profit for their companies. Like, just if you're not aware of that simple fact, that can have like major um, consequences on your day-to-day life. Sometimes it can be just mindlessly scrolling, and maybe you think this is a positive thing, but hey, the more awareness you get about those kind of things and those topics, the more and more you get your power back. So hey, you're scrolling for 15 minutes, or like you said, hey, I'm gonna message this friend of mine on Instagram, and then you open Instagram and just find yourself like trapped in
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I didn't come here for reels. I actually came here to talk to this friend of mine. And you kind of like
Yeah.
realize, oh, I kind of like manipulated somehow to mindlessly scroll through reels. So I think that we totally can, get some information, get some interviewees in the podcast, and get some research, and just like put out information that are actually empowering and helpful in a way that it can puts us in a path to take back control of our mental health. The last thing
Mhm.
that we want for us or for anyone else is to have their mental health on the hands of someone else.
That's true. And I feel like Coming back to a point that you made, that even news organizations aren't trustworthy anymore. Like, there used to be a time where if you saw something on TV, it used to be more or less true. Like, people used to believe stuff that they see on TV and news channels just blindly. And you really can't do that anymore because news channels make on number of views that they get, and the more the views that the and news stories that get the most views may not be the most truthful news stories. Like, obviously, if you exaggerate the numbers a bit, you're going to get a little bit more press coverage, and that's going to help you in one way or the other. That's going to get more views into your website or your socials or whatever, and it's going to increase the revenue that you make as a news company. So, and that especially is the most worrying thing, because the last bastion of actual truth that we had was news, like news organizations being truthful. And once you take that away, then where do you actually get truth from? Because then it's just reporting, right? If you can't believe in news organizations, you can't believe your politicians, you can't believe the individual reporters, because if everyone is just trying to make a quick buck by getting the most number of views, then everyone is just trying to out each other so that they get the most number of hate comments or kind of comments or views, because that makes money. So if everyone is just trying to get people's attention, then that is away the kind of information that they're trying to provide.
Yeah. And the answer to that is you can get your information from Mind on the Rock, the podcast about mental health.
Get your information from Mind on the Rocks and Infotech.
Yeah, in Infotech, you can get some useful information at infotech.com. No, just joking. But yeah, definitely, man, we have many things to talk about, and that's good.
Yeah.
But I think we can
Definitely.
probably wrap it up. Yeah, we can go on for hours.
How long has this been already, the recording?
Let me check it out.